the start of the year, I established a goal of trying to achieve the Georgia Bass Slam and was able to accomplish that goal. And with us winding down at the end of the year, I don't see tallying any more species. So I wanted to give a summary of that. Fortunately, I have 6 of the 7 species all on video and just wanted to talk a little bit about each one. It's been a fun challenge this year, learning about some of the different black bass species in the state of Georgia and their distinctive and the waterways that they live. Fish some areas that I hadn't fished before in trying to figure that out, and it's been a fun challenge. The first one was the largemouth bass, and of course that's one that I would have expected to have caught at some point during the year, but it was a fun one. It was on the Flat Creek public fishing area in Middle Georgia, and I had never been there before, and I hooked the fish on the second cast after I got there, which was a fun way to get things started. It was a beautiful fish. I didn't have a scale, but I would guess it was somewhere in the 5-pound range. It hit a Booyah flash point jerkbait and was able to land it, and it was the first one that I measured and photographed and got turned in for the Georgia Bass Slam. The second one was a Bartram's bass, and that's a fish that a species that I fish for just about every year because they live up in northeast Georgia and the areas that I fish. I often fish for them in the Chattooga River. And the trip that I caught the fish that I turned in this year, I caught a handful that would have qualified, and I'm pretty certain the one that I have showing on the video here is the one that ended up qualifying. I caught one late in the day that was bigger, which was the one that I thought would be the one, but when I went back and looked at the pictures, the markings made it look like much more of a hybrid. So I turned in it and one of the others, and the one that I turned in, like I said, is the one that I think is in the video. And I caught that on a Rebel crick hopper. Came up and hit it on the surface right at the beginning of the day, and it was just a fun day of catching the Bartram's bass. Third was the shoal bass, and I caught that in an area pretty close to home, and it also hit on top, and it hit a crick hopper popper, which is kind of like the crick hopper, except it's got a popping face, and it came up and smashed it and caught it in a lot of current. I didn't know how big it was. It turned out to be a really nice shoal bass, so I was excited to be able to certify that when I was fighting it. There are a few different species that are in that same section of river, some black bass and also some trout, so I didn't know right away what it would be, but it turned out it was a really nice shoal bass, and was able to get that as my qualifying fish. The next one was the spotted bass or Alabama bass, and it may even be a hybrid of the two. Those two, for the purposes of the Georgia Bass Slam, are together because the field identity is very difficult, and there's a lot of hybridization between the two species. But it certainly was one of them, or a hybrid of the two. And that one I caught on a Rebel creek craw, which is a soft plastic bait, and I was fishing it down deep on the bottom in a little deep run right below a rapid. And when I first brought it in, again, I wasn't certain what I had, but then when I looked at it a little bit closer, I could see that it was the spotted bass. So that was my qualifying spotted bass. The fifth one I caught and was able to certify was the Chattahoochee bass. And with the Chattahoochee bass, I had actually, once that was certified, that was considered achieving the Georgia Bass Slam, because you need 5 of the 10 possible species. And the Chattahoochee bass actually don't live very far from home. I was fishing nearby, but they're a species I've never really targeted. I'd never even fished a section of water where I was fishing, but looking at the map and at their range and kind of their habitat, I kind of thought that it was somewhere that I might be able to catch one, and I ended up catching a couple of them that day. One that was undersized, and then just one real nice one there. And I caught that one on a Rebel trackdown ghost minnow, which is a slow sinking, kind of a narrow profile minnow style bait. And they have fabulous colors, and it was really fun to catch. I hadn't gone after them before, but it's definitely something I'll be targeting again. The next one, my smallmouth bass, is the one that unfortunately I don't have any video clips of, just a couple of photos of it. It was late in the day, and a buddy and I were wading back across a stream where we'd been fishing, heading back toward where we were parked, and I was crossing on a little ledge with a pool underneath it, and I pitched my bait out, and it hopped on it and ended up landing it, and realizing that it was probably a qualifying smallmouth. It actually was a hybrid fish that the biologist said definitely had enough smallmouth to qualify for the Georgia bass slam purposes, but that it probably had smallmouth, spotted bass, and Alabama bass in the genetics, and then after I realized that it was likely a qualifying fish and had measured it and taken photos, I released the fish, and I talked about it when I released it. So I had a little video clip that I could tie in, and then after the fish swam away, I realized I had turned the camera off instead of turning it on. So I still didn't have any video of that one. Of course, I couldn't redo it because I'd already let the fish go. And the last one that I caught was the Coosa bass, a red-eye bass, and that was, in a way, was the most satisfying, because I had caught, I think, I'd caught that species on about 5 different trips and 3 or 4 different locations. I think 4 different locations, 3 different creeks or rivers, but they had all been too small. And I had even caught one day, or I had hooked one and had swung it up by the bank and was walking toward the shore and could see that it was a Coosa bass and probably was big enough, and it swung off and flopped back in the water and swam off. So I never got to measure that one, so I don't know for certain whether it was big enough. But I finally caught this one, and it was big enough, and it was on a crick hopper popper. I was actually fishing a tandem rig with a crick hopper popper with a jig beneath it, but it came up and hit the top water. And then the 3 species that I didn't ever end up getting this year were the Tallapoosa bass, the Altamaha bass, and the Swanee bass. The Tallapoosa, I caught one, but it was undersized, and it just is probably 1.5 inches too short of the 8-inch minimum, and so I didn't turn that one in. The other 2 I really never got into. It didn't end up spending time in waters where they live. So I never fished for those this year. Maybe it's something. Maybe I'll be able to expand that in future years. But it was a fun adventure for me this year, fishing for the Georgia Bass Slam and learning about the native species, or the different species that live in different waters in the state, and something I look forward to exploring more of.